My name is Neo Guaho. I've been in entrepreneurship for over 10 years now. Started as early as 2009. I was still employed, so I had the safety net of a salary. But where I stopped having the safety net of a salary or an employer, that was officially in 2009 when I quit my job and I decided to pursue entrepreneurship. At the time, I was pursuing social entrepreneurship. But then I didn't even understand that I was pursuing social entrepreneurship. So here is somewhat 10 years of experience now sharing with you on a more practical note. So the first thing that we've got to look at what is the meaning of entrepreneurship. All right. Now, throughout the modules, I'm going to cover very, very important aspects of the journey of entrepreneurship and your business, right? And I'd like to just prepare you mentally so that you know exactly what to expect and what I'll be covering. So, the first module that I'll be covering is what is the meaning of entrepreneurship and how do you fit in your business? And then after that, we will look at the dark side, the depression and the frustrations that come with entrepreneurship. All right. And these are things which are hardly spoken about. All right. Because a lot of times we hear the romantic side of entrepreneurship. By the time somebody's good enough to be invited by event organizers to come and address entrepreneurs, um, they are so far from when it used to be that struggle. So a lot of times is even when they speak, they will speak about their currency more and the satisfaction and the emotions that come with being victorious. And I do believe that the golden nuggets or the lessons that you need to grasp are within the early stages and the struggles and the challenges that they've had to go through. So I will cover that in that particular module. And then, of course, that ultimately will lead us to the importance of self discovery, mental well being. You'll be shocked just how much demanding and taxing the journey of entrepreneurship can be on your soul as well as your spirit. So, the last thing within that particular module, we'll look at the importance of separating yourself from your business. You are not your business. All right. Then, of course, the second last module that I'd love to cover, and these are what I call them basic building blocks to get right within your journey. The difference between a business plan, a business proposal, as well as a business profile. You'll be surprised how many people don't actually know. Or you'll be surprised just, how wrong you've got it. And obviously, lastly, and just as important, business development, growth, and working with teams. The importance of identifying and inviting the right people along the ride of your business and entrepreneurship journey. All right. Selling your vision to partners, selling your vision to employees. So, with that said, I hope you've got your notebook and you've got your pen because I'd like for us to also go through some practical exercises. And trust me, you are not ready to do this. What do I mean by this? Entrepreneurship, if you are not ready to be authentic and honest with yourself. A lot of times, over time, you'll come to learn that the biggest hindrance in achieving your success along your entrepreneurship journey is generally yourself. So it is not for you if you are not ready to be honest, most importantly, with yourself. It is not for you if you're not ready to be vulnerable and accept that I am not always going to be the best. I will have to work on myself. A lot of people have got great ideas, great business models, but a lot of times they don't achieve the success that they ought to achieve simply because they are standing in their own way. So let us look at the first module that I mentioned. What is entrepreneurship? Now, if we look at the word entrepreneurship is derived from a French word, entreprendre. I hope I pronounce this correctly. And basically, it means to undertake, right? So if you become an entrepreneur, it means you are taking a ride or you are embarking on an undertaking, right? So we could call you the undertaker, right? Undertaking a project, undertaking a business, undertaking a new system, and so forth. Now, what you need to bear in mind is let us move a little bit away from the meaning. What we need to get very clear is the intention of your journey. Why are you going into entrepreneurship? Because if you can answer that, then you will have a clear goal in mind. And when you have a clear goal in mind, then you will be able to eventually figure out how to get there. You won't have it figured out from the start, but eventually you'll be chipping away at the things that do not work and leaving the things that actually do work. In layman's terms, and I'd like for us to keep things simple because one of the most important things is we need to remove the jargon that most of the time leaves a lot of people confused, leaves ourselves confused, and we are unable to get our message across and get the response that we hope to get or anticipate to get. Right? So, two reasons you will embark on your entrepreneurial journey or purposes. Number one, to solve a problem within your community, within your environment, or in a space that you've noticed could use with a change. All right, that's number one. Number two is obviously to make a profit. How else is your business going to be sustainable? The idea is at the end of the day, you want to establish a sustainable and successful business that is able to take care of you and also take care of the people that work with you, that assist you, that contribute towards making your business a success. There are four distinct types of entrepreneurial organizations. I will list these four. Number one, we generally have the small business, all right, type of organization. That's, entrepreneurship one. And then we have the scalable startup, all right, entrepreneurship. And then we have the large company type of organization in terms of entrepreneurship. And lastly, yet not least, we have the social entrepreneurship, all right. And obviously, all four of these have different ambitions or goals or visions, ultimately, in terms of what they hope to achieve in the end, right? And by their nature, in terms of the organizational structure or the procedure that they follow, then that normally determines the type that they eventually are. If your goal is to improve your community's well being, to impact social circumstances, and to make a difference in your community, and that is all the payment that you need. Possibly you are lucky enough to have had some inheritance, and you don't have to worry about a roof over your head and the typical bills that most people have to put up with. And all you're focused on is making a difference in your community and within your environment to either planet Earth, to the next human being, then you are what we would classify as a social entrepreneur. Because your goal is not necessarily profits. You derive satisfaction and joy from the difference that you see happen as a result of your work or your contribution towards whatever endeavor that you're pursuing. But ultimately, you're still solving a problem. So that's still the common denominator between all these distinct entrepreneurial organizations, for that matter. Now, then we have the scalable startup, right? So you come up with an idea to either develop a new software or to develop a new product that will either improve a particular market segment's problem or a particular company's problem or several companies. So we can look at the lady that created Canva. I don't know if you've heard of Canva. And basically, what this young lady did at the age of 19, she went out and started developing a software that would help even people that are not graphic designers to create their own professional looking graphics. At the age of 19, I'm sure it was just an idea and she started working on it. And it did not have that much traction, but she kept working on it with her business partner, who later then became her husband. And today, Canva enjoys global success. It has made even the least of creative individuals seem like they underwent a course in graphic design. It makes us come across as if we are Photoshop specialists. All right. And that was a scalable startup. What started off as a simple idea to solve a simple problem in the home became widely adopted. And then we have a small business, right? Entrepreneurial organization. And essentially, you would be looking at items such as, or establishments rather, such as a bakery, small business. This person just, or the individual or partners, let's say it's two of you, you and your husband, or you and your brother, you and a friend, decide to come together because you know what, you've noticed that there's an opportunity within your community if you were to either open up a bakery, right? And your intention is not necessarily to build this monolithic, gigantic structure or big business that would then have corporate takeovers. No, what you are basically focused on, you're focused on servicing a need for confectionery or for bread, for that matter. All right. And that's that small business. A shop, a corner shop, somebody that sells, in your store, you sell mini groceries. People can buy bread daily, can buy cold drink, can buy milk. Small business, all right. It takes care of the individual or the owners. They're able to cover their bills and so forth. And then, of course, we have the large corporations. Large corporations don't necessarily always come from, you know, a place where they had a lot of investment. Not necessarily. The same way we think about the likes of Richard Maponya, who used to push a trolley around Soweto selling fruit and veggies from his trolley, going from house to house. Sometimes large corporations, large operations, they start like that. Today, You think of Richard Maponya, you think of Maponya Mall, and it is a large business, an entire mall taking up quite a several square meters, right in the heart of Soweto, and they've expanded their business to also encompass a dealership, a car dealership, where they sell cars, particular brand, as well as repair or service vehicles. So those are your large corporations. So I'm thinking that you can think of a few. So for purposes of making sure that you understand these distinct types, what I'd like for you to do is draw yourself a quadrant, all right? Four blocks that you have. And in the one block name, we'll call it quadrant one. And in quadrant one, what I would like then for you to do is to just list all the small businesses that you can think of based on the explanation that I've just given you. All right. Quadrant two, I'd like for you to think of scalable startups. They can be, they could have started there, and today they have scaled to become even bigger businesses. All right. Make a list of these scalable startups based on the example of Canva that I gave you. And then, of course, on the next quadrant, which is the third one, make a list of your large corporations, all right, entrepreneurial organization. And lastly, definitely not least, you can make a list of social entrepreneurship organizations that are currently running that you admire, whose primary focus is not necessarily profit, but it is to make an impact towards the well-being of human life on the earth, and possibly also others are focused on issues around climate change. So look at those and just make a list of those, all right? And then you can compare with, you know, either choose a partner that you can work with, and see if you've got the right thinking along these lines. So now that I've covered the four distinct different types of entrepreneurship, and we've looked at the meaning of entrepreneurship, which is to undertake an operation or to undertake a new project or to undertake a business where you become the undertaker or the overseer of the business, right? And the intention either being to solve a problem or to make profit, all right? So now, the one thing that I can assure you from my own personal experience is that if it's just about profit, the likelihood of you seeing it right through till the end is much less. So I would encourage you to rather seek to solve a particular problem, and then the profit goal becomes a secondary. It doesn't mean it's less important, because even a social entrepreneur, if he doesn't have a roof or she doesn't have a roof over her head, it really hinders their ability to focus on creating the impact that they need to. And for most of us, in order for us to have a roof over our head, we need to either pay rent or you're paying towards a bond. So you still have bills that are facing you, right? So sustainability becomes a very, very important factor. So even if the pursuit or the goal is not profit, there still is a need for one or the partners of that social enterprise to consider the fact that their enterprise needs to be sustainable. And this largely talks to it needs to be able to pay the cost of running operations that they need to, the cost of being able to achieve the things that they hope to achieve. And those costs, you can not pay them with good feelings, unfortunately. The electricity provider still wants their money. The water that you get, you still need to pay for that. They will not take the difference that you've made in the community and the good feelings that you've brought to the community as payment. All right. So, with that said, I hope we are reaching or we are at a point where we've got some kind of clarity around what we hope to achieve when we embark on an entrepreneurial journey. Now, I'd like to go to our second module. Oh, my friend, this is something that is seldom spoken of or spoken about. A lot of times, I'm sure you've watched inspirational videos on YouTube or wherever online, and most of the time, what comes across is the romantic side of entrepreneurship. However, there's this dark side, there's this frustration, there's this depression, and the emotional roller coaster ride that comes with being an entrepreneur, irrespective of the different types of entrepreneurship that you have decided to embark on, right? Now, no matter how vividly I may paint a picture of the pain and hardship that comes with entrepreneurship, you'll still not get it. And what I mean by that is if you find yourself in the midst of that storm, just remember that you need to go easy on yourself. It's not that you did not read enough books. It's not that you didn't do enough research. It is just the nature of the journey that you are on. It will test you in far more ways than anything else ever will in your life. I've even had some people liken the journey of entrepreneurship to a journey of self discovery. Others have even said it's a spiritual journey because rationale fails you, reasoning fails you as you try to tackle some of the challenges that come along your way. Make peace with the fact that just when you think you've lost it all, you could still lose some more. And if that's what makes you quit, then possibly the journey was never meant for you. I do not believe entrepreneurs are born. I believe we become as we practice daily, as we do daily, right? So it's always a journey that forces us to keep going back to rethink our journey, to rethink our purpose for doing it, to rethink if this trouble that it comes with is it really all worth it. Here's something that most successful entrepreneurs will probably never admit. I know I've felt it so many times. And when we are invited on public speaking platforms, this is the one thing that you'll never hear any entrepreneur say. You are most likely better off in a 9 to 5. Because a 9 to 5 offers you stability, it gives you guarantees. No matter how bad things get, you have a greater guarantee of an income coming in at the end of the month, whereby you'll be able to take care of your bills, your food, accommodation, clothing, transport, and many other things that you've accustomed yourself to. All right. Now, does this mean that there isn't joy in entrepreneurship? Certainly not. Because when you make those small victories and you achieve those milestones, the feeling that you get compares to none that you'll ever get. So I guess it is true. The size of the pain is directly proportional to the size of the joy. All right. That's when you do get the joy. A lot of times you'll feel like the joy is short lived. But like everything else in life, a lot of time, the good times would feel like they never last. And the bad times or the tough times, they just seem to drag on. All right. So mentally, you need to be very, very, very strong. And you need to have some kind of a higher power, so to speak, something greater than yourself that you believe is working in your favor. But you need to be realistic. There's something greater than yourself that works in your favor. It only works in your favor when you put in the work. So you cannot be sitting there hoping for miracles. All right? What has to happen is you've got to be realistic with the fact that I've got to put in the effort. Then there is a 50% chance I will earn something. If you don't put in the effort, then there's a 100% guarantee you'll earn nothing. And now I deliberately say 50% chance that you will earn something if you put in the work. Because you have to make peace with the fact that sometimes and a lot of times you'll put in the work and not see the results that you hope to achieve. You will work 6 months on that deal, on that prototype, and eventually get it right and take it to market. And somebody might decide that, nah, we are not buying. And that somebody might be multiple individuals that you were hoping to sell your product to. And they just might not buy. Your product might never see the light of day. It might not make it on anybody's shelves or in anybody's home for that matter. Right? So there is that you've got to make peace with. However, if you didn't put in the effort, if you don't put in the effort, definitely you're not going to see any results. Right? Among many debilitating and devastating thoughts, feelings, and emotions that you will experience along your entrepreneurial journey, one of the most prevalent ones that you have to be wary of is there will sometimes be thoughts of quitting. There will sometimes even be thoughts of suicide. I always say that embarking on an entrepreneurial journey is next to a suicide mission, right? And a lot of this pressure really comes from how we were socialized. We are born in a world that, in its majority, was designed to prepare us and train us to work for someone. Most especially if you grew up in a home where your mother or father were employed. The thing that you keep hearing most of the time when there is lack in the home is, I can't wait for month end, I can't wait for payday, right? So, to a certain extent, that becomes your socialization. That becomes your relationship with money. Your relationship with money and your belief system becomes money comes at month end. Now, it's going to take a lot of psychological re engineering within your mind to now move to a step or to a new psychology or a new way of thinking that says, my goal is to make money as frequently as possible within a month. The concept of month end has to fly out the window, but it takes a lot to get to that state of mind, to get to operate in that way. Because what we believe, we act out in our habits, we act out in our actions. All right? You must see your behavior. Your behavior changes during the course of the month. Towards month end, you are walking differently. You're almost down and out. After payday, you've got an extra bounce in your step. It's funny how you make all the right plans and make all the right decisions while you don't have the money. Once the money is in your bank account, all those good ideas around how you're going to better manage your money, they then come second to instant gratification, to the things that you actually want to have now. Right? So it takes a lot of discipline. Your sense of worth and your confidence as you are embarking on this journey of entrepreneurship is going to hit an all-time low. One too many times, that is. So now, this is where you need to understand, or you need to get it correct in your mind, that you are not your business. You are not the enterprise. You are the undertaker to the enterprise. A lot of people, they cannot distinct, or they fall into the trap of not being able to split themselves from their business. The very same way that a professional, when you ask them, please tell me about yourself, they'll probably tell you their name first. Then after that, they'll tell you that I am a doctor, I am a lawyer, I am an accountant, right? And that's where I say that is very, very dangerous, especially in the world that we are living in today, where almost every profession is under threat in terms of employment. What happens when we take the title away from you? Then what are you? Do you understand what I mean? Exactly my point. My point is maintain that separation between your business and yourself as the individual. How you view yourself and how you see yourself cannot be defined by what you do. Being a doctor is what you do. You know, being an accountant is what you do. Being a lawyer is what you do. But I've often asked audiences this question: do we need accountants or do we need accounting? I'll ask that question again. Think about it some more. Does the world need accountants or does the world need accounting? And I'm bringing the subject in because now more than ever, we are in a world where we are automating as much as possible. And to break it down in the simplest terms, maybe in your profession, you cannot imagine how artificial intelligence and how a robot can take over your job as a doctor. Let me simplify it with something that I'm sure most of us have already started seeing, or if you, depending on which country you're in, you've seen this for years now, whereby typical McDonald's joint used to have a number of tellers, maybe 10. And then one day you walked into McDonald's and there was fewer tellers, and all you had were these screens that you could go to and actually place your order from and even pay there with your card. All right. So those machines, we are seeing them replace the waiters or the tellers that would otherwise be the ones that basically take your order. So why I am bringing this point into the picture is that when you are no longer working as a teller and you have defined yourself for years as a teller and you have derived your sense of worth and value from the description of what you do, so much so that you ended up being convinced that you are what you do and you went around describing yourself as what you do, then it means that your sense of value and your sense of self worth will be stripped away from you. I used to work for a company called Lexpro Systems, all right? And I was a software developer for that company. And as early as 2006, we were developing software for lawyers. Now, 2006, that's over 10 years ago. If at that time our pursuit was to reduce the amount of work that a lawyer has to do, that was the purpose of the software that we were building at that time. Can you imagine 10 years later today how much more advanced it is? We had quite a number of clients at the company we were working for, right? And yes, our software did make an incredible impact. It reduced the number of hours that lawyers worked on a matter, drafting an opinion, and so forth, right? Now, today, imagine we bringing AI into the space, artificial intelligence. And if we take it that artificial intelligence is constantly becoming better based on what you put in today, what you put in tomorrow, and the more data you give it, it eventually gets to a point where no effort is required on your end. So, meaning that in the next 5 to 10 years, you can have an entire app or an entire software that will draft you an official, legally accepted professional opinion that does not even need an intervention of a lawyer. Do you see what I mean now by nobody is above automation? Even the tasks that we thought could not be replicated, AI is making frontiers in such spaces whereby it becomes such an intelligent system that it will be able to formulate opinions based on opinions that you fed into it years ago, every day, till present time, possibly in some not so distant future. Now, this brings me back to separation of you from your business. Because if your value is derived from the business, When the business does bad and the solution that you've been providing is no longer in demand, you are going to hit an all-time low because your sense of worth and value was all tied up in how the world perceived that business. If the world says we no longer need lawyers because litigation can still happen through AI, and you've defined yourself as a lawyer, then what happens when that situation becomes a reality whereby litigation can still happen without your intervention, without your contribution? It means that your sense of worth and value will be out the window. And this is a very dangerous ground to find yourself on as an individual, most especially as an entrepreneur. Ideas are simply ideas. And when the environment changes that no longer requires the idea, new ideas have to come up. Now, if your sense of worth was tied up to that idea, it means that you lack the confidence to go back and reimagine a new idea in a new environment. Your confidence levels will have taken such a knock that you will not be able to recover and get up again and develop a new solution. And bear in mind, for every new technology or solution that is introduced into the environment, a new problem comes up with it. Let me paint you a picture. Not too long ago, the buzzword is or was self-driving cars, autonomous vehicles, right? And you start thinking, whom would this technology threaten the most? Obviously, I don't have to be a rocket scientist. We don't have to scratch our heads over this. Once cars are driving themselves, transport delivery personnel will be out of jobs, right? Most certainly. Will there be a need for a taxi driver? Certainly not. Will there be a need for a delivery van driver to deliver goods and products? Certainly not, right? Now, if you are unable to accept and adopt, it means that depression and frustrations, which will ultimately lead to one having no sense of worth at all, will become your daily bread. But if you can think outside the box for a moment, then you'll start exploring and saying, all right, fine. There's nothing I can do to stop the coming of autonomous vehicles, vehicles that drive themselves. But however, these vehicles are going to come with a challenge. Because once you do your research, you'll realize that these vehicles need a particular type of infrastructure for them to work correctly. All these vehicles, most of the time, have been tested in controlled environments where the infrastructure in that little space was suited to support and respond or help the vehicle respond to its environment. Now, without complicating this further than it needs to be, already you can tell that clearly the streets and the roads that these vehicles travel on will need to be fitted with some kind of a sensory object that the vehicle can be able to talk to via its own senses so that it can figure out its obstacles, what to avoid and what not to avoid. And now I don't care how good robotics that we build, infrastructural work to a certain extent will still need human intervention. Somebody or some people will need to go and install those particular devices or sensory objects that need to go into the roads. Do you understand where I'm going with this? So the idea is we have to constantly be evolving with the times. We have to constantly be re-looking the environment and saying, how is it changing now? So as a result of the change that's coming about that is threatening my job, what new job opportunity is coming as a result of that? You understand? Same thing applies to business. If you embarked on an entrepreneurial journey of, let's take the very same example, you're going to deliver food or whatever products, right? Because COVID is now the order of the day and people cannot be out as much as they used to be or as much as they'd like to be. So most people are ordering in, right? Great business when you went into it. Great idea when you went into it. But let's give it a couple more years. You build this business and it's flourishing and you stay on that. You decide that you're not going to innovate, you're not going to imagine the future, you're not going to keep track of new things that might be coming in within the next couple of years. You will find yourself in a peril when new technology comes in, when infrastructure has been built, and now vehicles are driving themselves. You see what I mean? So, the journey of entrepreneurship is one such that it requires constant re engineering, reimagination. All right, imagining the future and not just imagining it, but also observing and analyzing the changes that are happening around you within your environment on a daily basis, on a periodic basis, as well as a yearly basis. Based on that data as you collect it, it's only a matter of time before you are able to imagine and predict as accurately as possible what a new future demand will be. So, how did I get into this particular situation? All right, where I started speaking about the changes that are happening in the environment is that I need you to divorce yourself from the idea. Yes, pursue it, be relentless about it, but figure out what are the factors that make this idea that you have and this solution that you're trying to introduce become a viable option. And once you've figured out those items, you keep track of those items. Any change that happens in any of those, you need to imagine how it would impact the viability of the idea that you have or the business that you have. Psychologically, if you are not married in a way whereby there is no distinction between you and the business or you and the idea or your solution, then you will be in a position to adjust yourself accordingly as the environment changes. So, I am re emphasizing the importance of separating yourself as an individual from the business, from the idea. Treat it as a separate entity with a life of its own, with its own requirements for it to exist. And those requirements, generally, for it to exist, most of the time have nothing to do with you in as far as their viability in the environment. So now, I would love to give you an exercise. And here's an exercise that I would love for you to undertake. I would like for you to look at your current idea that you have or the business that you have. All right? And the solution that you have. And consider, or now let's look at how are you going to take it to market? What are the building blocks? What are the factors? I want you to figure out what are the factors in the environment that make your idea viable. All right, list all of these down. Right, so we can take the idea of a delivery. I'm going to do a drone delivery service, right? Because you're seeing that, oh my goodness, if I had long range drones, I'd be able to deliver quite a lot of items over, cover a large area. All right. So let's take that idea for a minute and say, look, you are going to invest as much time and as much of your energy and as much as of your resources into pursuing the idea of establishing a drone delivery service. Great business idea. Now, what are the factors that make this a viable idea? COVID, right? It means people cannot go to restaurants. There's restrictions, there's lockdown rules, and so forth, right? So that's a variable that works in the favor of the idea becoming a viable business opportunity, right? Now, let's look at another factor. Another factor is that people are not driving as much as they used to, right? So they are getting acclimatized or they're getting used to the fact that you can order in and people don't want to cook as much as they used to, right? So the fact that people are not cooking as much is also another variable, right? That works as a positive towards your idea of drone delivery service becoming a really cool idea, becoming a really viable idea. Now, list all these factors. So, whatever idea that you have right now, your exercise right now is to list all the things in the environment that make your business a viable business opportunity. Right. Now, park this to the side. Following up on that particular assignment, now I would love for you, still with your business idea, imagine factors that would change. Remember, we figured out what are the factors that make your idea a viable business idea. Now, what could be the factors that could impact your idea from being a viable business solution? Now, we don't know whether COVID is with us for life or not. But if all of a sudden we were to wake up one day and they said COVID is no longer there, do you see how that would impact your business? People now can go back on the streets in numbers that they used to. Restaurants will now go back to operating as normally as they used to. So then, thus making your business not as viable, right? Because at the end of the day, human beings are still what? Social beings. They need human interaction. So it comes natural. They'll want to be out there. You understand? So with your own idea or solution or service that you're providing or you intend to provide in the market, I want you to imagine factors that would make the environment for your business idea less favorable. Right. Now, once you've done this, The last exercise that I want you to do in line with this is I would love for you to imagine or start saying, all right, if this is my idea, if these bad things or these things were to happen and the environment were to change with all the factors that I've identified that make my business a viable business idea, if they were to be impacted, now what I need you to do is I need you to now start imagining solutions that will either change the nature of your solution. It's okay even if you end up with a totally different idea from the original one that you started. It is absolutely okay if that happens. We have a number of businesses that started off as a certain type of business, but as the environment changed and the demand changed, the market demand changed, and human economic behavior changed. It changed the nature of the business and the idea of the business. Let's think Amazon for a second. Amazon, when it was first established, it was supposed to just be a book publishing business, online business. And today, you look at it, it is so far from how it was conceived and what the intention of it was. It's now one of the biggest cloud solution businesses globally. Now, would it be enjoying the global success it is currently enjoying if it decided to stick to the original idea? I doubt very much. All right. So they expanded on what they had. Online publishing, book publishing. Then they added something. Then they added, and then today you have a totally different beast that is gigantic. All right. And that then concludes this particular module that I was touching on, whereby I was talking about self discovery, mental wellness, and separating the business from the owner. And you'll notice that it kind of like ties back to the second module where I was talking about the dark side, the frustration, the depression of entrepreneurship, which is never spoken about. But I hope I've given you some nuggets that you can go and apply, and you've got this exercise that you can go and do. All right. Now, it is very clear for you before I wrap this particular module up is you need to understand who you think you are versus who you really are. So this is another exercise I'd like to give you. And why this is important is then you can be realistic about the types of business or ideas that you can pursue. Once you understand the characteristics that will be required of you. All right. So, you can just divide a page in half. Who are you? So just right there, who am I? Who am I really? And who do I think I am? If you don't want to use the who, you can use what am I? Or what am I really? Versus what do I think I am? All right. And let's see. And generally, you can even use those next to you, close to you, your family, friends, and so forth. You can ask them to help you, like, what do they think of you in terms of your characteristics and so forth. All right. And this will be a very good exercise that can help you to be able to just get to a point where you are as accurate as possible about the reality of the type of person that you are. Right. And then you can start looking at how do I improve where I am lacking. Because as you're embarking on your entrepreneurial journey, you also need to understand what it takes, the type of discipline that you need to have, the type of commitment that you need to have. And that then will inform the kind of character traits that you need to have. All right. And another one, make peace with the fact that it is okay to be wrong. And a lot of times you are going to be wrong. And with that, I think I've given you enough for you to work with. And possibly also, I do expect you to come up with questions that you can put through to me, and we can be able to tackle this together. And with that said, I thank you very much.